Good afternoon. It is 2 p.m. Central Time, Saturday, June the 15th. The year is 2019, and I'm Leon Davis, and this is Altitude Adjustment. I want to thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. And if you've followed any of my podcasts, you'll know that I am a big supporter of a free press, and I think it's important because that's how we get our information. That's how we get to be in places that we physically can't get to, and to understand what's going on to be able to make better decisions. Now, one of the things that I've heard complained about Fox News is that they've intertwined their opinion hosts with their news hosts. And that kind of mixing of things seems to bring down the news aspect of it. The difficulty that I find is that a lot of the individuals who are lamenting Fox News's behavior, their hands aren't very clean either. That's coming up this show. Welcome to Altitude Adjustment.
Glenn, you ever wonder what he's doing right now day to day to keep the empire afloat?
That's something that's coming up in a minute. But anyway, so as I mentioned, I don't think that a lot of news agencies have a clearly defined line between hard news and opinion. Now, one of the things that I do realize is that people that are news workers, they go out, they do a lot of research, they have access to information that we may not have access to. And a lot of times when you know something that someone else doesn't know, you can sometimes start to feel that you can educate, you should influence other people's decision because you have that information that they don't have. And so one of the ways that news agencies do that is with opinion segments, because as the news segment is about giving you the news, giving you the facts, giving you not so much the color or more opinionated stuff, but giving you the coldness of it, the cold facts. This is what happened. This is when it happened. This is how it happened, et cetera, et cetera. And so what a lot of agencies do, especially in the newspapers, they have the editorial section. Now, editorial as an adjective is relating to the commissioning or preparing of material for publication. As a noun, a newspaper article is written by or on behalf of an editor that gives an opinion on a topic or issue. It is so it has been accepted practice that those people who are responsible for giving us our news, responsible for giving us the facts and allowing us to draw our own conclusions and understanding and creating our own understanding or our own ideas about how that information can be used. Some of those people are also sharing their opinion in the same medium. Now, there aren't a lot of so-called mediums to particularly share your thoughts and ideas with, but so I would think that the editorial section, for one, would not be done by people responsible for news. People that are responsible for just giving you the facts. They would not be associated with that whatsoever. As I mentioned, I can understand why they would want to, but it can create a feeling that they're being influenced. So if you share your opinions, if you're a person who's responsible for delivering the news, just delivering the facts and allowing the consumer to make their own opinion, to develop their own opinion about it and how they want to use that, and then you try to, because what an opinion by definition is a view or judgment formed about something, not necessarily based on fact or knowledge. Now, for me, and I like to add to that description, it is an attempt at influencing someone's view on a subject or person. So when you give your opinion, so these news people do a lot of research. They do they get information that you may not necessarily, the average person may not necessarily have access to. So there are things that they understand or things that they see that they feel they need to share. It may have been, they did research on a particular topic or a particular story, and the article never came to be published, or the story never ran, but they still have that information. And so another story, similarly related, comes up, and they may have something that they feel, because of the previous stories that they've done, that information is pertinent in that situation. And when you're sitting on that kind of information and you think that people need to know that information because it would help them make better decisions, you may have a tendency to try to get that in there and influence how people consume the information that you're providing them, to try to slant or put your own spin on how they digest what you've given them. And I think one of the difficulties of having editorial or opinion sections in the same adjacent to news is that it allows people who are looking for some way to disparage or discount or discourage what you're telling them, because one of the things that I think is extremely everybody should know is that doing the right thing is most times very difficult, because we as individuals, we learn and we make mistakes, and we hate making mistakes. We're harsh on people that make mistakes. And so we have a tendency to be guarded when it comes to making mistakes. And so when someone presents information that goes against what we've believed or any ideas that we've held for a long time, we look for opportunities to discount that, to ignore it, to belittle it or berate it. And by placing opinion adjacent to fact, discovery in a particular organization allows people the opportunity to cast doubt on the information that you're providing them. Now, one of the things that I think is important to keep in mind that while we're delivering facts, there is an opportunity to deliver interpretations of those facts. Now, so what that means is you can present the facts, and if you think that the message is unclear in the facts, because they are just hard and cold facts, some interpretation of that may be necessary. Now, I don't have a particular example right off the top of my head, but some interpretation of that is important. Now, there's a difference between opinion and interpretation, and it's a very subtle, very nuanced difference, but it is extremely important in maintaining and presenting objectivity at its best. One of the most important things I think that we need to achieve as a society is having an organization or having some way to be objective in presenting information. And that's important because if we can't achieve that, then everything becomes about what I feel is right or what I want to be right. And so objectivity then becomes moot. And so it's important that objectivity remain consistent. Now, so I talked about the editorial sections, and editorials are usually newspaper related, but television has its, and I mentioned that Fox News has opinion anchors. I don't know if you want to call them an anchor, but they have opinion show whatever, and they do the best that they can to try to muddy the facts. And that one of the things I was talking about, it was interpreting versus opinion. And so there has to be a clear delineation between an opinion host and a fact-based news presentation. Now, I've got a couple of clips here. And so while Fox News is getting slammed about the clear blurring of the lines between fact-based news and opinion-based delivery of information, some of the other media organizations do things that lend themselves towards presenting opinion in a fact-based discussion. So you have a lot of the shows have guests on, and they have and having a guest on is important, is deciding if that guest, and one of the things that I think is important is a news organization has to some degree vet the guests that they have on to determine if what they're providing is fact-based or if it is just opinion. And while that some people can say, well, they picked that guest because they knew the information that they were going to present. And so that may be one of the challenges that they have in deciding who to bring on the show. But another aspect of it is the kinds of questions that they ask. So one of the things that I tend to do, especially when I'm watching someone interview someone else, is try to identify if the question that they're asking is going to elicit a fact-based delivery of information, or if it's going to be an opinion. So I've got a couple of clips here I'm going to play for you. The first, I'll go ahead and play it, and then I'll talk about it.
Glenn, you ever wonder what he's doing right now, day to day, to keep the empire afloat? I mean, his kids can't handle it. Who's keeping this house of cards with all these billions of dollars potentially up in the air, all based on credit from God knows who?
No idea, and I don't even know if it's millions of dollars up in the air. Maybe it's thousands of dollars.
But it's borrowed money.
It is borrowed money, and it may be dirty money because, you know, when...
Okay. So the question was asked, and the guest... So first, let me say the questioner made the statement that the children were not capable of operating this business. I have not seen any factual basis for that statement. So the question was framed in such a way that it was a given that the children could not function or operate this business. And one of the children had her own business, was head of her own company, made decisions about her business. I don't know what other qualifications you need to qualify as competent business management wise. Every manager should have some failures on their resume. If you don't have any failures on your resume, you cannot succeed, because you do not know what success is. You do not know how to recover from failure, which is a part of managing successful business. It is more than just dollars and cents. It is the ability to sustain a company through difficulty. And so this young lady has run a company, and by all indicators that I know of, was fairly successful at operating her company. And so to imply that she was incapable of running the business, to me was more opinion than fact. And so then the person goes on and talks about the money, and it's borrowed money, and then goes into, could be criminal. And that was all conjecture. They didn't present any facts that says that this money is criminal. And so to throw shade in that manner, I thought was beneath the responsibility of an organization to present who prides themselves on facts, provides themselves on discovery of information to give the public an opportunity to see what goes on in the world around them, to make better decisions. A company that prides themselves on that allowed that to occur. Now, I don't know if they vetted this individual and had an idea that he was going to say what he was going to say. My guess is people that they invite on the show, they know their resume. They know the kinds of words that they use, the hyperbole, to make their point. And so I think we have to hold them, the news agencies, to some level of standard that, if this person does this on a regular basis, if this person does this as a part of how they communicate, is that a benefit to the listener to get unsubstantiated accusations in a news clip, in a news show? So this next one is a video, and so it was hard for me to see where the question led to what I think was the hyperbole. But again, and even the individual had a resume that says, they should know better than to just use hyperbole. But I'm going to play the clip, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I got to get your take on the press conference in which he cajoled his advisors to say something nice about him in front of the press. When you saw his various spokespeople, Sarah Sanders, Kellyanne, even Hogan Gidley, who was attesting to Trump's behavior in a meeting he did not attend, when you saw them praising the president on command, what did you think as a former press secretary?
I thought we were in North Korea, or we were in the Kremlin, or we were in Saudi Arabia, where a king was sitting upon the throne, and his servants were at his feet, serving him. It was.
So, so she asked the question. I wasn't able to detect where she was leading to I don't know, maybe the part where it goes, "What do you think?" That led to the hyperbole, but I cannot imagine that Trump's behavior immediately sparked the idea that he was a dictator and he was a king on a throne, and that's how he was approaching this. And so one of the things that I think I hear a lot. So I watch a lot. Try to watch a lot of different news sources, and one of the things that I have noticed is that everyone tries to. So we're all people. We're all social beings, and we all want to be a part of something, and we all want to be a part of something that's successful and big. And what I see a lot of people doing is they find something that someone said that was really interesting or really exciting, and they tend to you saw a lot of clips where people have said this, used the same wording or the same phrase to describe something that is kind of not really factual based, but it's just kind of cutesy. Like he was a dictator. While Trump's behavior may be harsh and gregarious, dictator. Okay, so you'd have to show me more, and so to go directly to that, I thought was a little bit over the top. So as I mentioned, a lot of times, somebody will come up with something cutesy to say, and I was really disappointed. So one of the things that I heard, Sarah Sanders resigned from her position in the current administration. One of the news people that cover the White House, April Ryan, has had run-ins with Sarah Sanders. Most of the people that in the room have had run-ins with Sarah Sanders, but I don't have the clip, but one of the she was being interviewed in one of the news shows, and she came up with the term liabetes. Said that Sarah Sanders had come down with liabetes, and that was cute, but it wasn't newsy. It kind of smacked of partisan behavior, and so I think it's important to maintain that objectivity as much as possible, and it does not benefit, I think, the people who listen to the show to see this mentality where everybody tries to out one up somebody else on a really viral new thing to describe something. Then it just seems that news agencies are playing to emotion rather than sticking to the facts, interpreting those facts as best they can to ensure that people are getting the best and right information that they need. So one of the things about the editorials that really kind of stuck out at me was an article in the local Post-Dispatch. It was on the Riverfront Times, and it talked about So the county executive was recently indicted on 3 charges and was removed from office. And the Riverfront Times article, which I thought was an absolutely excellent article because it had quite a good information in it, but it showed where the local big paper, and one of the local TV stations seemed to, both of them endorsed so Dooley was a candidate, or he was a county executive, and he had been endorsed by the Post-Dispatch twice before. And so again, I believe they endorsed him in the editorial section, and I don't like that idea that the editorial is so adjacent to the news section. But in this instance, they had endorsed him twice. Then they did not endorse him because supposedly there was corruption. So they endorsed another candidate. This other candidate, Stinger, wind up being caught up. So Dooley never had any charges brought against him, never had any investigations that were released about him doing his job. So there was, so Stinger, who was eventually indicted for the exact things that the Post-Dispatch had claimed that Dooley had done, which one of the newspaper people who reported supposedly on possible corruption in Dooley's administration and advocated for Stinger's election. After the election, and this was a newspaper person, after the election, accepted a position with Stinger's administration. And you can see how that can lead to questions of objectivity by actually endorsing a candidate, by actually the newspaper person actually trying to pick a winner in that, and then taking a job. It seems like they maybe beforehand had talked with the incoming, the guy that was running against the incumbent, and said, you help me get in, and you get me elected, and I'll have a place for you. It may not have actually been that situation, but it lended itself to that because of not defining a clear line between fact-based delivery of information and opinion. So I say this as far as objectivity goes. Objectivity impacts every facet of our lives, from news to education, science, criminal justice, law enforcement, mass transit, just to name a few. Now, the ability to objectively assess and use information is essential to building a better and more inclusive community. One of the most important factors for objectivity is that it is applied consistently where it is required. Then we need to ask the question, can we truly be objective? Every time a news agency or scientific study or government entity abandons objectivity, it fuels arguments that objectivity is not sustainable and not reliable for all purposes. The application of objectivity must be maintained at all reasonable cost for the benefit of us working together. I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. It has been a pleasure bringing you this show. I will be, so there's 2 more shows before my summer break. I will not be broadcasting through the month of August. And this podcast is streamed live each week on YouTube and on Facebook. And you are encouraged to participate by asking questions and including your thoughts. And to participate, please contact Altitude Adjustment by connecting via Skype at The Lion's Den at .stl@gmail.com or Google at thelionsden.stl@gmail.com. Please feel free to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube. Also, be sure to look for this and other episodes where you listen to podcasts. Your likes and shares are internet gold, so like and share this podcast where you find it. Remember, to be cool, be calm, but above all, be careful. Look out for the other guy, because they may not be looking out for you.